said, which is to do it based on when.
Okay. But nice things. Okay, it's recording now. And broadcast, so I'll let people in. Welcome to those people attending. We're going to get ready in just about 2 minutes. Thanks. Just making sure, Dave, that you can see the slides on the screen. Just a thumbs up. Perfect.
So thanks, everyone. We'll give it a couple of more minutes and then we'll kick off and do some introduction, go through the agenda. We've got a pretty busy session lined up for you, and we'll get started shortly. Okay, I think we'll get going. It looks like we've got about 65 participants or so on the line now. I think our registration was up at about 100, 110. So I'm sure some more will trickle in, but it is a pretty packed agenda. So we'll get underway here and start going. Getting the thumbs up from Amber that I think we're live and off to the races. So thanks everyone for attending today. We do have everyone muted. Just given the numbers. So to participate, if you have any questions, please use the question and answer box on the Zoom platform or the chat box. If you do use the chat box, just keep in mind everyone will be able to see your question and who it's from. I think in the question and answer you have a little more discretion, but I'm not exactly sure. Amber can weigh in on that.
Yep, that's correct.
Thanks, Amber. Our intention is to share the slides with you after the session. So you don't have to frantically scribble notes or try and take screenshots or anything. We will send those out afterwards. We're going to do a bit of an introduction and just some thoughts from AMO and M3RC around this regulation, similar to what we did a couple of weeks ago on MHSW, along with Trevor Barton from MWA. We're then going to pass it over. We're pleased to have Mary Cummins from RPRA on with us today. And Mary is going to provide an overview of the e-regulation and the transition process from RPRA's perspective. And then we do have a number of the producer responsibility organizations who thus far have stepped forward and said that they plan to participate in the collection and providing services to designated producers under this regulation. So we wanted to give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about what their plans are and give you a bit of an overview of what their intentions are, what their interest is in perhaps using municipal governments and communities to provide servicing for them, and some contact information. So it's not there's a lot of them, as you can see. They've got about 10 minutes each. We'll have a limited time for maybe a question or two for each of them, but we're going to try and make sure we get through all the presentations and then a bit of wrap up at the end. But we will make sure you have all their contact information, and we're happy to help facilitate any follow-up questions or anything. So in terms of the process, we are, what's involved here is it's similar to the process that's been followed and that you've seen for used tires and batteries. The regulation includes some changes to designated materials, standards for collection sites, targets, and things like that. But your current agreements that you have in place to collect electronic materials on behalf of OES will no longer be valid when the program transitions next year. So that's scheduled for January 1st. If you do want to keep going and providing services to producers, you will need to enter into new agreements with one of these pros if you want to be compensated for that and have your materials count towards the tonnage and the targets and the other conditions that producers need to meet in the regulation. So you will want to have those in place in advance of January 1st so that you're clear if you are going to provide those services, that you do have a contract in place that specs your compensation and how that's going to work. There's a number of pros, as you saw the list earlier, that will be seeking service providers to help them meet these collection system requirements, and you'll hear from some of them today. Next, please, Amber. So a key part of this, as we've been, saying to you for a while, I'm sure you're sick of hearing it, but it's really going to be critical to understand your current costs. I think you want to really ensure that you understand your, some of the things that may get overlooked sometimes around overheads, maintenance, permits, by material. If you have that sort of granularity of your data to understand what your costs are, have a good sense of what your constraints may be too around space at your site, storage constraints, your ability to implement data collection, tracking, and things like that will all be important, so that you can ensure when you're entering into discussions with the pros, you have a good sense of what your costs are and what it costs you to provide the services, so you can compare that versus the compensation being offered. Next slide. I think you also want to develop a decision-making process on how you'll go about this too. How will you engage your council? You know, how will you work through this decision around whether you will stay in this line of business and providing service to producers for collection of electronics, and how will you make those decisions? Do you need your procurement team engaged? Do you need some legal assistance? Those sorts of things. How will you go about engaging with the pros? Will it be a procurement process? Will it be, some type of a negotiation process? You'll need to look at those things and what works within your municipality, and maybe how you want to work with other municipalities as well. I know some folks have talked about that too. So, some considerations there. Next. I will now pass it over to Mary. So Mary, thanks for joining us today. Mary is the Deputy Registrar at RPRA and is going to be talking to us today about this regulation and the what it means for municipalities in Ontario. So Mary, I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dave. And thank you, AMO, for organizing this and getting this going. I think it's important for municipalities to understand how the regulation affects them and what next steps they can expect and what they should be doing to prepare for it. So some of the things that I wanted to talk about today, next slide, Amber, just to go through the agenda quickly, is what's actually changing. So what's actually happening, some key important dates around those changes. What is E? It's not the same as what was under OES. So I wanna cover that off for folks, and also to sort of open it up for questions. We're still evolving in terms of that definition. We only received the regulation a little over 3 weeks ago. So the compliance team is still working that out, and will be providing more and more guidance to the producers, which in turn will help, I think, municipalities as well in understanding what E is covered under the regulation. I'm going to talk about the producer collection requirements, because that's the component of the regulation where municipalities understanding what the producer collection requirements are going to help them quite a bit in terms of understanding how they may want to participate within those collection requirements as well. In that section, we'll cover a little bit more broadly some of the requirements producers have in the regulation. And then just lastly, we'll talk about the regulation and specifically how it affects municipalities. So this slide deck doesn't speak to tires, batteries, blue box. It doesn't speak to any of the requirements producers may have in NA grade detail or other registration requirements. We wanted to keep this very focused. You have a busy day coming up with the rest of the session with all the other pros presenting to you. If you have questions about those other components, though, that doesn't mean we can't help you with them. So there's information on the last slide where you can contact us and have a discussion about those programs as well. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's changing. Next slide. Perfect. So some key changes. So like I said, a little over 3 weeks ago, the government released the e-regulation. Now, the e-regulation contains, and we're going to talk about this in a second, 2 different material groups. So it's unlike tires and unlike batteries, where tires was one material group and batteries was one material group. We've now got a regulation that has 2 different material groups. So that means there's 4 different types of materials now covered under Ontario's IPR framework. December 31st is when the WE program operated by OES ends, and OES themselves begin to wind up. So we're going to talk a little bit more about OES and OES being gone and what that actually means a little bit later in the deck as well. And so with OES gone, the WE program ending, January 1st is when this regulation, the majority of the requirements kick in for the producers for them to assume the responsibilities. Next slide. So a little caveat here, I'm not the wind-up person, so I'm not able to answer a lot of your wind-up questions. So if you do have questions about wind-up, when do I get this invoice in, when do I do this or that regarding OES, I would strongly encourage you to contact OES. I've put a few of the key dates. These are probably the most common and frequently questions RPRA gets. So I threw these in here just so people had a quick, easy reference. But I will not be able to help a lot with that transition and any of those questions you guys have, and definitely encourage you to contact whoever it is that you speak to at OES. Next slide. So let's talk about the authority's role. I think most folks have become fairly familiar with RPRA and what we do and who we are. But I want to sort of reiterate some key messages that we still get a lot of these questions. So I just want to sort of give everybody this overview so that they understand. So we're the regulatory body. So what that means is, unlike our predecessor, Waste Diversion Ontario, we actually have compliance and enforcement tools available to us. We have a whole suite of them actually within the Act that created us as well. We have responsibilities of creating, maintaining the registry. So the registry is something some of you in tires would have been interacting with, but not for batteries, and you'll see in a second, not for E either. It's where RPRA is able to collect all of the information from obligated parties. So that includes, you know, a transporter, a processor, a retreader if it's tires, a refurbisher if it's E, so that we're able to be the ones who have the holistic view of what's happening to these obligated wastes in Ontario. We know what's getting collected, by who, where it's going, how much is actually being processed. So it's probably one of the key components and responsibilities that RPRA has and key tool for overseeing and enforcing IPR is our electronic registry. We also enforce the accessibility requirements, and we're going to talk about what those are for the E-regulation. They're different in tires and they're different in batteries. So they're not necessarily the same for each. So I just want to sort of call that out. So we enforce those accessibility requirements and ensure that the producers have a network across Ontario that's in compliance with the regulation. And then the really important part is enforcing the minimum management requirements. And you notice I don't use the word targets here. What's in the regulation are not targets. Those are minimum management requirements. So what that means is that when a producer hits their minimum, they don't stop. They're not a quota. It's not an amount that they get to and then they're done. You know, they hit 55% of their target in September and they're finished. It doesn't work like that. And we're going to talk about why and how and what levers RPRA has that makes it so it doesn't work like that. We do not replace OES, so that means that we're not going to have any contracts. We have nothing to do with the contracting between producers or pros, or between pros and municipalities. We do not oversee that. All of those issues, unlike in the old system where we did have some role to play in that world, all of that is now dictated through the marketplace. So negotiating a contract, it would be no different than what you would do when you negotiate for any of your services with any of your vendors. So we don't actually operate any of the programs and we don't pay out for anything. And I think that's an important thing. And I'll just pause there and also quickly note the regulation doesn't speak to the marketplace or the contractual arrangements that happen between folks. So a contract between a municipality and a pro, or dictating terms of that contract, including whether incentives are paid. The regulation is completely silent on all of those things. Everything is now dictated by the open marketplace. So it ensures a competitive marketplace by doing that. I just want to make sure folks know that there's nothing in there that requires anyone to pay for anything. All of it is dictated by, this is what the objective is, and how folks hit that objective is up to them, and it's going to involve contracts and probably payment for things. But the regulation does not talk about the marketplace. Next slide. So now let's talk about E. I don't know, we didn't really talk about the format too much if I'm pausing anywhere for questions. Normally I would pause here, but we'll keep going and maybe have them at the end, and Amber can always flip back to slides if somebody needs to revisit something. So E under the regulation has this very lovely technical definition, which doesn't mean a huge amount for a lot of people. I think the concept that you can take away from this slide and what is E is that it doesn't matter who is the purchaser of the E. So if you're a hospital, if you're Mary buying a laptop, if you're RPRA buying the laptops for their employees, it really doesn't matter who is purchasing the E. All of the sectors are obligated. And in terms of restrictions on E overall, it's not any electronics, any E, and we'll talk about the different categories, embedded in a building. So think of something, when you read these definitions, you can see things like an elevator might be captured. Well, that is permanently part of a building structure and is not intended to be captured. So this definition sort of helps guide us Nobody's expected to take this definition and sort of create their own list. That's going to be something that RPRA is doing. So that list isn't even in the regulation. RPRA will be developing that and helping provide that guidance. One thing I want to note with the battery regulation only covered batteries that were sold separately from the product. So what that meant is whether it was in the packaging, or embedded in the product. So, you know, the remote control you may get with your remote, that's now included under E. It's not included under batteries, but it is all ultimately covered. Next slide. So as I said, there's two materials in this regulation. There's lighting, and then there's this lovely new acronym for our world, which is information technology, telecommunications, and audio visual. I'm not going to talk about lighting at all today. Lighting is triggered much later in the regulation. So I know you've got product care coming in later for lighting, but that's not something I'm going to talk about with the regulatory obligations, just because I really do want to focus on the more immediate concern, which is ITTAV. Next slide. So ITTAV, the definition, has a primary purpose of collecting, storing, processing, presenting, or communicating information. It has to weigh less than 250 kilograms, right? Now, with that definition, lots of things are in, and you could pretty much capture a huge world of electronics. And so there's some notable exclusions throughout the regulation and some caveats which carve this and make it a little bit more concrete. Like I said earlier, it is not the same as the OES-WE program. So there are more materials and in some cases less. OES didn't have a weight restriction. This regulation does with 250 kilograms. So nobody can make the assumption that because it was part of OES, it will naturally fall in this regulation. Next slide. We'll just go through some, I'm going to call it the ones that are a little bit different, right? So you can see drones with audio or visual recording equipment. So these are just examples. It's not exhaustive. That's not covered under OES. Musical instruments and audio recording equipment also wasn't. So these are some examples of things that expand the definition, expand what materials are captured. And then there's things that are very much the same. So radios and stereos, including aftermarket vehicle, but not vehicle, those sold within the vehicle at first point. Next slide. So examples of some of the things that are explicitly excluded, and again, this list is not exhaustive. There's a lot of sections in the regulation that talk about what's in and what's out, and RPRA is working with folks to make sure that that's comprehensive. But something that's really, a few things that are notable is children's toys, anything that's textile that contains E, street lights and signal lights for lighting. We won't, like I said, we won't focus too much on lighting today. One thing I want to note, big change between anyone who's familiar with the draft regulation and the one that was posted and published. It doesn't include things like power tools or refrigerators. So small appliance, large appliance, and that concept of other E is not part of this regulation, like it was with the draft regulation. So it's going to be really important, I think, for municipalities to understand what is it that they're contracting to collect if they choose to collect. Perfect. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about those producer collection requirements. Okay, so we know producers are obligated to establish a collection system. They have to do it in accordance with the regulation. We'll talk about what that regulation says that they have to do. We also know that producers have to process everything collected within 3 months. And we know that, so those are the, I'm just going to stop there really quickly. Those are the levers that allow us to make statements like the collection system is always open. Doesn't matter if they hit their management requirement, the collection system continues to be open. So if it gets collected, the producers are responsible for managing it. And they have to do it to a minimum requirement of 55% for next year. And that target increases in 2025 to 70%. Some other important considerations is, much like batteries, much like tires, consumers have to be able to drop this off for free. And then there's also requirement, and there's some other requirements that producers have to ensure within their collection system. Producers are also required to operate P&E. So making sure that they've got collection location services on their website, material available to the public. Next slide.
Mary, I'll give you a second to, you're doing a great job. I want to give you a second to breathe and ask you a question if that's okay.
That would be perfect. I know you guys have a busy day, so I'm trying to give you all the information and making sure that I pause on the more important slides,
It's
which are
fantastic.
coming up.
So the first, the question we've got is are digital thermostats home security alarm panels with a display, a digital display rather, of numbers and text included as display devices?
So there's a notable exclusion in the regulation that states that if its primary purpose is for measuring or monitoring, it is not included, even if it matches the definition. So what that means is a thermostat, which is for measuring and monitoring, but also does those other things, would be excluded. That said, I know that the ministry is currently consulting on next regulations and including the MHSW regulation. And so folks may want to direct questions around those sort of materials into that effort when they see the draft MHSW regulation as well.
And I just have one more quick question, and I think it's from a call-in listener, so I'm going to try to allow them to talk. Cameron,
Sure.
Can you speak and ask your question?
Sure. I was just wondering, with respect to P&E, if there was going to be a dedicated website for residents of Ontario to go to with program information and collection site information.
So that'll be up to the producers and their pros to figure out. So there's a minimum requirement, but that's not in the regulation. With regards to their management requirement, they may very well require that sort of a tool in order to meet that minimum management requirement. So again, this idea being it's an objectives-based regulation. So your target is 55%. That's your minimum requirement for hitting your management. What the producers do to get there is entirely up to them.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you. I will switch to the next slide for you.
Perfect.
Mary, it's Dave. Just one other question that we've had with this, and I think I'll play back what I think I heard, and you can tell me if I've got it right or wrong. But I think, you're saying there is management requirements and thresholds that producers need to meet, but the idea that these sites and collection system needs to remain operational regardless of the achievement or not of those results. The one piece that has been raised is I've heard is concern that then will we see a drop off in P&E efforts or things like that? And I think you're saying there's also standards and requirements around that.
There are the minimums for everything. So there are minimum requirements so that things can't completely stop. And then from that, it's up to the producers to decide how they reach the rest of it. Correct.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so we won't spend a lot of time on this because it's a bit of a technical concept, but really what the regulation has ensured is it's said that there are minimum amounts of collection sites that are required within each municipality, and it's linked towards their population. RPRA will develop a little chart, much like we did with tires and exactly like we did with batteries. So you can even take a look at that and say, okay, how many sites are required within my municipality according to the regulation? That does not mean those will be the only sites. And I'll explain what that means in just a second. Next slide. So those sites, those minimum requirement sites, it works out to be just under 1,000 sites across Ontario. These rules apply. So the producers must ensure that all ITTAV is accepted unless it's a retail location, and then it must be of a similar type of ITTAV that's being sold. So, somebody who sells nothing but cell phones isn't expected to take in, a printer. And then it must be readily available to the public, operated normal hours for the public. That collection site must at a minimum accept 50 kilograms of ITT per day. It doesn't mean that they can't accept more, just means that they have to record particular types of information and retain that information for RPRA. It doesn't have to get reported to RPRA, you just need to track it. So this is the concept where you may have, a producer may say, okay, municipality XYZ needs 10 sites according to the regulation, and they set up 10 sites that adhere to these requirements. But then on top of that, they're going to have sites that maybe aren't available to the public. So sites with it, and this is much like batteries. There are, in RPRA's office, there is a battery box and there is an e-box. That is not available to the public. that cannot count towards their minimum requirements. Right, so there'll be more than the 1,000 sites that are required in the regulation. It's just that at a minimum, those 1,000 sites must follow these rules. So it's just an important point to sort of note, and that's what RPRA is enforcing against. So the idea that there could be a collection site that isn't available to the public is completely up to the producers. RPRA is enforcing against these available public sites. Next slide. The producers in the regulation also have other options, alternatives to collection sites. So they could offer curbside collection, they can offer a mail-back program, or they can have events, right? There's criteria they have to hit in order for these things to be allowed to count to reduce the amount of those minimum sites, those roughly 1,000 sites across the province. Regardless of, a producer could do all 3 of these and get the maximum reduction, but they can't reduce it to less than 1. So at the bare minimum, even if your entire municipality is getting curbside collection of E, they still have to have at least 1 site. Next slide. There's also some additions in the regulation around crown sites. So these are Ontario municipal crown land, municipal sites with populations less than 1,000, and sites located on reserves. And so these are here. So for ITTAV, once a site has more than 4 tons, they contact a pro or a producer, and the ITTV must be collected within 1 year from notification. So the pro has a year to arrange for that collection. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about how this relates to municipalities and folks on the line. So first, and most important, you do not have any registration or reporting requirements under the E regulation. This is very important. It's a common question we're getting under batteries from municipalities, so I really want to make sure folks know this, because you did under tires, but you don't under batteries or E. So no registration or reporting requirements. You will still have, if you choose to collect ITTAV, you will still have record retention requirements. So for instance, that whole 50 kilograms, if you collect more than that from a consumer, you're going to need to record that information, retain it. And you may have particular requirements in your contractual arrangement with your transporter or your pro, but nothing between us and you. In terms of how a municipality sets up a collection network, if they want to, they don't have to, right? So a municipality could say, you know what, I took a look, there's 30 sites required in my community. I'm going to direct my residents to those 30 sites because I know those 30 sites have to take the E from my residents, so I'm getting out of it. You do not have to collect ITTAV, but if you choose to, right, you need to contact a pro registered with the authority to get information about the services they can provide you and what sort of requirements they may have. Again, entirely up to you. So you may contact a pro. You may read through their contractual terms and say, no, I don't want to do this. Or you may read through the contractual terms with one pro and find it's too onerous and decide to go with a different pro. Entirely your choice. Next slide. So if a municipality doesn't want to collect the ITTAV, like I had said, you're able to say, hey, look, here's the list of sites available in our community to your resident, and you're able to take that ITTAV there. Next slide. So a little bit about a Pro is you're going to hear about them later on and hear from them directly. But a producer responsibility organization, these folks that you're going to be contacting if you want to collect ITTAV, are those organizations that have been, they're similar to OAS, but I want to make sure we know they are not OAS. They're similar to OAS or the other IFOs. They're private companies, right? So RPRA does not oversee their finances. We do not set payment amounts that they pay people. We don't oversee their contracts. They're private companies who have gone into the business and have said to producers, hey, we can help you meet your compliance objectives. Sign up with us, and we'll go out there and set up a compliant network for you. We'll collect the ITTAV. We'll make sure your management requirements are being adhered to. We'll deal with RPRA and all that. We'll do a performance audit for you. These are private companies in competition with each other. So Pro A and Pro B are directly in competition to get electronics from you and they're directly in competition to get different producers to pay for their services. OES will be gone. OES is not continuing in any shape or form. There's no more OES, and there's nobody who's replacing OES. They all do similar things, but they're now all in competition with each other. Next slide. So here they are, and you'll note there's even more from the folks that are presenting to you today. We now have DNA Group as well. This list will grow, shrink, evolve, and change, and that's normal. Don't worry too much about that. Let's say you sign up with 2 pros, and that's absolutely something you could do as well. You don't have to sign up with only 1 pro. You could say, I'm going to sign up with 2, and figure out some terms with them on that basis. You lose one, the other one picks up that site for you. It is normal that the market will shift, especially during the transition period. But the point is, producers are still on the hook for operating that collection system. So regardless of a pro leaving or changing or market dynamics, the producers are still the ones ultimately on the hook to make sure it's all happening. Next slide. So what are the key takeaways for you? The next steps I really want you guys to think about on this. First, I really want you to think about, okay, it's my choice. I can choose whether I operate a site or not. You can say, like I said, you can say, I'm not going to operate a site. I'm going to start directing my residents to other sites, and that's a change for my residents, but that's my choice, and that's what I'm going to be doing. Right? You could say, no, I do want to operate a collection site, and so I'm going to contact some of the pros and find out what they can offer me. Find out what they want to do with me, find out maybe they want to do curbside collection, maybe they want to host some events, maybe they don't want to have a public site with me or something else, and all of this is your choice. The key is make sure you have a contract with someone for it. So don't just start collecting ITTAV or start offering curbside collection to your residents without being sure that a pro is on board with that plan. That's probably one of the most important messages I can give to anybody who wants to be in the ITTAV collection business is that they need to have a contract with someone to actually collect it. Don't just start. And then also, a little bit of a note here, we didn't talk much about all the other deadlines or the different rules under the regulation. You may meet the definition of a hauler. I know there's a few municipalities out there that do haul some of their own things. And so just contact the compliance team if you think, man, I might be in that boat. Just so that we can have that conversation, because it's a different track altogether than you being a municipal collection site. And so I think there's maybe only 2 or 3, and we've reached out to them already. But if you think you might be in that boat, do let us know. And then also something to make sure that you guys are aware of is that you can also make sure that the entire transition happens and you guys are setting up your contracts and setting everything up into 2021. The producers have until April of next year to tell us what their publicly available collection sites are and what their collection network would look like. So there is some runway for folks to start working this out with different companies and different pros. And that, I think if we go to the next slide, is just our contact information now. So I'll stop there. I think that there's a few QAs that came in, Amber.
Yeah,
so
thanks, Mary. I appreciate that, and thanks for getting through that so quickly. I appreciate that. That was a lot of slides, so thank you.
It was a lot of slides and a lot of information, but I try to stay on time.
Well done. I think I'll ask a question by the chat function first. It was just a clarification about whether gaming systems and GPS units are now part of the program.
Gaming systems are. GPS systems would actually depend. I'd need a little bit more information. Broadly, yes, they are, but there could be different caveats that would exclude them. So if somebody wanted to know what those might be, but more broadly from the municipal perspective, yes. When it comes to producers reporting, they do have some different caveats in terms of is the GPS system only a GPS system. There are some exclusions for things that are put into marine, like so boats and things like that. So producers may not have to report all of them, but they do broadly meet that definition.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, if a municipality is the hauler to ship collected E to a processor, do they have to register?
Depends on the contractual arrangement. So the definition of hauler is the person who arranges for the transportation. That may not actually be the person who's physically doing the transportation. So it really depends on how that contractual arrangement's set up, and you can set it up however you want to make sure that you're saying who is the hauler in this situation. So for instance, in batteries, we'll just use this as an example because I know it happens frequently with batteries, and there's curbside programs. And without calling anyone specific out, I know there's a service provider that does do this service and offer curbside collection for the municipality. It may be a municipal truck that's picking up the batteries, taking them to a site, and then it may be that battery processor coming and getting them from the site. The key question isn't who picked up the batteries from the consumer, it's who's arranging for that. And so we'd have to have an individual conversation, just to sort of, not a long one, to say who's actually doing the arranging for it. And in the case I just described, for instance, the contractual arrangement was set up that it was actually the processor who was doing the arrangement, not the municipality, not the actual person driving the truck either on contract. It was the processor. So it depends.
Thank you. Minimum requirements for management and P&E will help prevent backsliding, but what is motivating producers to pursue continuous improvement and recover more E?
So there's actually the minimum requirements change every year. So it starts at 55. I think they have 2 years of 55, and then it goes all the way up. And on that slide there, I want to say it was 70 or 75 for 2025. So there is a continuous improvement in their minimum requirements. So that would be where that trigger comes from for them to continuously improve.
Okay. As E evolves over time, what opportunities exist to update the list of accepted materials, and how is this addressed in the regulation?
So the regulations given us a definition, and that is it. That is it. That's what is there. If there are other materials, so for instance, appliances, large or small, that folks want to see, that's up to the ministry to update. So it's not a list that RPRA holds where we can say, now we're going to get small appliances in or power tools. It's entirely up to the ministry then to add other materials to this regulation.
Will municipal staff be allowed to take dumped E to a collection site?
As long as you hit those requirements. So if you're taking it to a public, and we have this in tires right now. It's funny that question came up because we do have a few municipalities who are just taking the tires to publicly accessible tire collection sites and leaving them there. In some cases, it's less than 10 tires or less than 50 kilograms of ITTAV, so they can't be refused. In other cases, they call ahead and make an arrangement and say, I have this, and the collection site is usually more than willing to take it. So yeah, there's no reason why municipal staff or someone from a business or anywhere, there's nothing that restricts that. And there's nothing that says that they can't accept more than 50 kilograms of ITTAV, just that they must accept a minimum of 50 kilograms of ITTAV.
And Mary, last question for you. Is it possible that by December of this year or leading up to the transition, we will not know, being municipalities, the number of collection sites within their municipalities, or more importantly, where they're located, in order to help them decide as to whether they collect at their transfer station or roads yards?
Yes. These are tight timelines. The producers aren't required to report on their collection system until April of next year. So while you will know what is the minimum requirement, you wouldn't necessarily know at that point what has actually been set up.
Okay. Well, thank you. Those are the ends of the questions. So I'll pass it back to Dave to do the transition to the next presentation. But thank you, Mary.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Mary.
Take care.
Take care. So thanks. And up next, we do have a couple of reps here from RPRA. We have Cliff Hacking and Pierre Prim with us today, who are going to talk about RPRA's work as a pro and what they are looking to in terms of working with potentially with municipalities to help them with their standing up their collection system for the producers that they have as part of their pro. So with that, I think Amber, we've got both Cliff and Pierre, and I saw Cliff for sure. I'm not sure if Pierre's here or not, but I'll turn it over to you two gents and leave it to you to walk us through. I think we've got about 10 minutes or so for the presentation, and then maybe 5 minutes at most for a question or two for each of the different pros.
Super, that's great. Nice to meet you. And as I say, Pierre and I are both on the line. I'm Cliff Hacking. So if you go to the next slide for me, please, Amber, that would be great. Okay, so we'll try and go through this as quickly as we can and leave time for questions. And I recognize that we're running a bit behind in terms of the schedule, so we'll see if we can make up a bit of time there. EPRA was established in 2011, and we operate across the country. So this is not a new game to us. We've been doing this, whether it's in British Columbia or Prince Edward Island or Newfoundland, we really do go right across the country. We deliver compliance, efficiency, and low cost. And we've got very high standards in terms of what we do. We're financially sound, we've got an experienced team, and we're easy to work with. I would go on from there and say that from a couple of places, we've got an administrative system that allows us to keep our costs quite low, which may or may not be of interest to you, but we are a not-for-profit organization, and our interest in all of this is to deliver a service on behalf of the businesses that we represent. We refer to them as stewards, but that could be retailers, it could be manufacturers, or anybody in between, any of the distributors that are involved in this space as well. So we believe that we can keep our costs low, and as a result, we will reflect what it costs us to do business. And hopefully then, in terms of working with you, we can do things that allow you to be able to do what you need to do and to get compensated for the materials that you collect. We do have expertise in this space. As I say, we're safe and secure and environmentally sound in terms of recycling, and we audit our processors to make sure they're doing the right thing. Give me the next slide, please, Amber. Due to a bunch of reasons, we have some history with the OES, the incumbent, if you will, that expires at the end of this year. Back in 2012, OES was bankrupt. And the board of OES approached us as we were operating across the rest of the country and asked if we would take over the program and run it. We did. We returned it to financial health. We curtailed a great deal of the out-of-province activity that was going on. There was material coming in from that we had proved from New Jersey and from New York and from Quebec that was being claimed in Ontario, and so we curtailed that activity. OES is now being managed by a wind-up team. They've completely been segregated. They've moved to different offices. They have a person reported from BDO who is managing that process. And so they're separate from us and have been for some period of time during this wind-up as they get to the end of the year. Can you give me the next slide, please, Amber? So we've been working with over 1,400 municipalities across the country. So whether it's Manitoba or Newfoundland, we have relationships and value those relationships with our municipal partners. We make it easy for pickup. When we tell you we're going to be there, we'll be there. If you need service contracts in place, we do that. We pay our bills on time. We're financially sound. And we make sure that we create customizable local solutions. And I think the local solutions are important here. We recognize in many of the municipalities that having a relationship with a local hauler or with somebody who is in that community is very valuable and is reliable for you. And so we work in those ways to make sure that you get what you need. So when you bring your electronics to us, we, as I say, ensure safe, secure destruction of the personal data that's stored on the hardware. There's no unauthorized reuse of this material. It gets destroyed and turned back into materials that we can move forward with. And we see that as a real key for us in terms of what's going on. Give me the next slide, please, Amber. So we're pleased to be registered with RPRA as a pro. We registered on the day that registration opened, and you will probably know that there are now 5 pros registered. We expect there'll be several more before the process is finished. And from our perspective, we say a couple of things. We're ready to go in terms of January 1st. We know that every municipality has unique needs, and we look forward to working with you. So you can see the contact information there. I'm sure these slides will be made available to you after. Next slide is good. That's fine, Amber. Thank you. And so what we do, and this is a time for the question as far as I'm concerned, I mean, we deliver packaging materials to you at no charge. We collect the bins at your site for no charge. We're timely and reliable in terms of pickup services. We've got a communications and promotion materials that are available to collectors so that we can help you with signage and branding and those kinds of things. We do prompt payments to make sure that collectors get their money on time. And we have an online system for reporting and tracking. So, Pierre Prim is on the line with me. Some of you will know him already. He would certainly be the contact for working out details, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Cliff. I don't have any questions at the moment. I'll give people sort of a minute or two if they wish to ask questions.
Amber, maybe I could ask one just to start. I think if it's Dave Gordon with AMO. Gents, if someone is looking, are you guys doing like a standard offer around the materials and pricing? Is it individual negotiations? If people are interested in talking to you about this, how how should they best engage with you? Is that, as you said, I think, Cliff, contacting Pierre, or anything more that you could offer? Is your I think people are probably most interested in, do you have active interest in pursuing municipalities as potential collection sites to help your producers that you have meet your obligations?
Hi, Dave, it's Pierre. The answer to most of those questions is yes. From a top level, we do see municipalities as a key collector that we have lots of experience working with in the past, and we hope to continue working with the majority of the municipalities that we have. We do work individually with each municipality. We don't have a set price per ton that we're going to pay because, quite honestly, a lot of municipalities, it's not a one-stop cookie cutter type shop that we're dealing with. Everybody has their own unique requirements, and we do want to meet with them and have the ability to have that discussion one-on-one to figure out what the best solution is for them.
Okay, great. And Pierre, so folks who are interested should reach out to you and initiate that process?
By all means, and we too will be reaching out as quickly as we can to as many people as possible as well to see if there's any interest.
As I said in the presentation, we have over 1,400 relationships across the country with municipalities. So we value them. We think we do a good job of working with them, and we provide prompt payment, which is important as well.
Cliff, I do have a question from one of the attendees. For municipalities currently contracted with RPRA now, how will the December 31st wind-up work?
So you will receive direct communications from the teams to basically outline what needs to be done. So that'll be communicated probably within the next month or so when we all understand what needs to be done.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's the questions today. And as I said, and just to reiterate, Cliff, the slides will be made available to everyone. We're actually recording it. So you will they'll be able to get your slides as well as this as well. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you, Dave and Amber. Appreciate your support and glad to do this. If there's anything else you need, please just reach out and let us know.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so I think we've got a bit of time here in terms of setting up for our next speakers. Next joining us is Product Care, who's going to be talking, as Mary mentioned, they are talking a bit more around on their, they're going to be talking about their lighting program. I see here, Amber, their slide is around MHSW. I think that's probably just mistitled, but I think, I don't know if this is the wrong deck maybe on MHSW,
Yeah, let me
this
just...
is what they want to talk to. We can talk with them once we get them on the line here.
Yeah, let me see here. I've stopped sharing, so let me just triple check here. Sorry about that.
Pat, are you there?
I just joined, yep.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
No problems?
I think we were just working with your deck. It looked like the one we had was more focused.
I've got it, Dave.
You've got it?
I got it. Too many things happening. Okay, so.
For some reason, I can't see your screen.
That's okay.
She's
It's
gonna
by
share
design.
in a sec. Little technical glitch here, you know, when we've had good webinar discussions with you, what, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, we had a little mix up there.
There we go.
Here we go. Okay, so
We're
many
back.
of you will know Pat Patchaway from Product Care. We're going to turn it over to him to talk about lighting. As Mary mentioned in her presentation, lighting comes into effect a bit later in this program, but thought it was a good opportunity to have Product Care come and talk about what they plan to do with the regulation and for the producers that they have as members. So Pat, with that, the floor is yours. You got about 10 minutes or so, and then some time for some questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. As Dave mentioned, my name is Pat Chauvet. I'm the program director for the Ontario programs. I'm not sure. We may have Mark Kirshner on the line from Vancouver. Mark, if you're there, you just say hello. That'd be great.
It's Mark. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thanks.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll go on mute, but thanks for introducing me.
Great. Thanks. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overall about Product Care, we operate in 9 provinces in Canada, 8 paint programs, 3 HHW programs, and of course in Ontario, we're currently operating the paint and pesticide, solvent, and fertilizer programs. We also manage 5 lighting programs across Canada, including 1 in Washington for lamps, and a 1 alarms program, which is in BC. So a little bit about Product Care. Next slide. So just to give you a little background, and most of you probably have lived this along with myself and others. We started managing the paints and coatings program in on June 30th, 2015. And then on April 1st, 2016, we started managing pesticide, solvents, and fertilizer. We worked very closely with the municipal transition group, some of which may be on this call. We set up agreements with each municipality for depot and event services. We developed an Ontario Service Partner portal for reporting to make it easy to submit claims and, of course, try to minimize some of that paperwork. We also transitioned the ISP materials, the inventories administratively. So there wasn't a requirement to go out and conduct a physical inventory at each depot. Who is responsible for the materials before the transition date and who is responsible for that after the transition date. So we did it all administratively, of course, taking that burden off the municipalities. Next slide, please. Again, a little bit more about today's program. Currently, we operate or we work with 100 municipal depots. On average, we have about 300 events a year. We had 298 last year, and we're up to 311 return to retail sites. Oops. Okay. Thank you. For PSFs, then, we're 99 municipal depots, and again, about 300 events annually. We have established relationships with transporters and processors. The MHW transition date is July 1 next year, 2021. And just to be clear, if we haven't said it, Product Care will be a producer responsibility organization for paint and PSFs. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. Also, as a reminder, Product Care supported an interim lighting program back in 2015, 2016. Residential use mercury containing lighting was originally included in the phase 2, phase 3. Remember, the MOE canceled the expansion in 2010, then provided funding to municipalities, excuse me, for a short period of time. Funding was canceled a year early and earlier than expected, and the industry stepped in. So Product Care supported a voluntarily funded interim lights program from about June 2015 to the end of May. Most municipalities participated, as well as retail locations. The funding that was supplied was $1 million over that period of time, the 11 months. And just some stats at the bottom there of what was collected from municipal locations. Over 528,000 CFLs, 732,000 tubes, and 2,200 HID lamps. So not bad. Lighting. So as you know, there's a new regulation, 522/20 is the electronic equipment, which does include lighting. The EEE portion, electronics portion of this starts on January 1st, 2021. Lighting program starts on January 1st, 2023. So we've got a little bit of a runway here. Products include all lamps of all technologies are included. User sectors are silent in this regulation, and we believe it implies that all sectors are included as part of the regulation, which would include residential, industrial, commercial, and institutional. Unlike other provinces, there's no program plan required. However, every producer must achieve collection system, management targets, promotion education requirements as set out in the regulation. Generally, producers will achieve compliance through a pro, such as Product Care. Next slide, please. Perfect. So what's designated as lighting, and this is a quote from the definition, lighting means EEE that has the primary purpose for producing light, such as a bulb, lamp, light-emitting diode, an LED, or tube, including but not limited to some examples that are set out later in the regulation. This would include light bulbs, tubes, lamps, incandescents, fluorescents, halogens, LEDs, HIDs, and again, those are set out in the regulation. Items that would be excluded include lighting that is provided with another product or a fixture, lighting that has also fallen into the electronics category. So if it's an electronic with a little bulb in it, it would belong to the electronics program. Lighting fixtures are excluded, as well as street lights, signal lighting systems designed to manage movement of vehicles and pedestrians. Next slide. Great. The new regulations, such as tires and EE, allow producers to manage their own waste or work with a pro, such as Product Care, a producer responsibility organization. So again, I'm saying it again, Product Care will be a pro for lighting, as well as a MHSW, which starts next year for paint, pesticides, solvents, and fertilizer. There are some items that we are required to do as a pro, or we can do. We can arrange the establishment or operation of a collection or management system, i.e. processing, transportation, collection, or we can establish and or operate a collection or management system. We can also prepare and submit some reports. So that, based on what the reg is saying, there are some items that we can assist the producers with. Next slide, please. I'm hitting my keyboard to change it. You know that, right? To change the slides. This is just a visual of the LAMP programs Product Care has across Canada and Washington State. So we have over 1,400 collection sites across Canada. The green there, obviously, are the provinces that we operate in, of course, in Ontario in 2023. And last year, we collected over 11 million units of lights across all these programs. So again, just to give you a little bit of background on Product Care. Next slide, please. The collection system. The lighting collection system is expected to include municipal, depots, and events, return to retail location, distributors, and large volume pickups, as we understand it. Product Care will already be a pro for MHSW materials and hope to work with municipalities for collection of lighting as well. There are some, from a municipal perspective, That will provide you with one pro or one organization to deal with for paint, PSF, and lighting. There will be some service provider synergies. You won't have 3 or 4 trucks coming in to pick up these materials. It can be one. There will be the single claims portal as we have it today, and it'll be consistent with reporting requirements, documentation that we have today. And of course, the payment terms will remain the same. Transportation and processing. Product Care will discuss service provider and logistics options directly with municipalities. We've already had discussions and I'm in contact with Avitas, Veolia, Green Tech in Ontario regarding lamp recycling. And we're currently working with Avitas and Veolia outside of Ontario, so in other provinces. All transporters will be pre-approved by Product Care to ensure they meet regulatory requirements. So those transporters coming to your site will be pre-approved by Product Care. This is not
Pat, just we got about 2 minutes or so.
Okay,
we can give you a bit longer, but we can wrap up.
Thank you. Yep. These are just some of the collection boxes, non-exhaustive list that you may see collecting lamps. If you go to the next slide, then you should all be familiar with this. This is our portal. Lighting will have the same portal. We're going to adapt the system to accept lighting claims. The portal may be modified or modernized is probably a better term to use as we move forward with the adaptation of lights. Next slide, please. So in summary, Product Care looks forward to working with all municipalities that collect lamps. Product Care works with most municipalities now for paint and PSF. MHSW program starts on July 1st, 2021. Lighting begins on January 1st, 2023. Product Care will be a PRO for MHSW materials, and combined with lamp collection will simplify municipal operations for depots and events. There is a Product Care service partner portal that's currently used for MHSW that will be adapted for lighting as we move forward. So if we go to the next slide, that's the thank you slide and the contact slide. So if any municipality has any questions or wants to contact us directly, you can email us and we'll give you a call back.
That's great. Thanks very much, Pat, and thank you, Mark, for presenting to us today. Appreciate it.
No worries.
It's quite the endeavor getting everyone in and slotted in and then out again. So thank you very much for your patience with that. Appreciate it. Amber, can I flip it to you for questions?
Yep, I don't have any questions at the moment.
I think I see one there in the chat. Just will Christmas string type of lights be included?
I'll say I'm not the expert yet, but I believe they are not included, is my understanding. But we can get clarification on that.
Perfect. That's great. That's great.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And as I say to both Pat and Mark, the slides will be sent around to everyone as well. So, and this is being recorded. So if there's any additional things that folks have, they can reach out directly to you on this contact on the slide. So thank you very much for participating today.
Perfect.
I have a reservation.
Good, thank you.
For the
Thank you.
10:15, the 9.
Thanks very much. Great. So Amber will just queue up the next presentation, but we have Gord Day with us today from Rise Solutions, who is going to talk to us about their pro. Many of you will know Gord and know Rise and the Mterra group of companies from other files and other programs. They are engaged in a number of these, and thanks for attending with us today, Gord. We'll get you queued up here, and then you've got about 10 minutes for your presentation. And if we have some questions, please put them in, folks, using either the Q&A function or the chat, and we'll make sure that those get to Gord.
Gord, I just want to make sure I I don't see him yet.
Carmelina is on.
Carmelina's on, yeah. Carmelina,
Gord
do you want to?
was here in a little bit ago. I'm not sure if he has left and is coming back on. Do you know Carm?
That's right. Sorry, I'm just, yeah. We had to pop off and come back on.
Oh, I think he's
Perfect.
there now.
There you go.
Yeah. Hey,
Great.
Dave.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us today. You missed your big intro. It was very good, I think. I did well.
Thank you.
But thank you for coming, both of you. And we've got about 10 minutes for your presentation and about 5 minutes or so for questions if anyone has them. Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Gord and to Carmelina.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I guess someone's advancing the slide there.
That's me.
Thank you.
There you go.
No problem. Again, just for those of you who do not know who we are, Rise Solutions was created in 2018 in preparation for the regulation, the tire regulation, and that transfer of that program from EPR to IPR. So we're one of, I think there's 6 registered pros now for tires. We're the largest pro in terms of the number of producers that we work with. We're the second largest in terms of the volume. We are also registered as a pro for batteries, so one of 3 pros on the battery side. So at this moment, we believe we may be the only multi-material pro, as we have obviously registered as a pro for waste electronics. So between myself and Carmelina, we've got lots of experience in Ontario, and especially on the WE side. Most of you know Carmelina. She's formerly with RPRA and WDO, and she was the actual program manager responsible for the WE file for many years there. And in one of my earlier lives, I was the program manager for under contract for Ontario Electronic Stewardship during the plan development, the original plan development, and operation of OES for the first 3 years of the program. So together we know the industry very well, we know the players, and so we've got lots of experience on the WE side. Next slide, thank you. Again, for those of you who don't know, Rise has been created, we are part of the Emterra group. Emterra, as you see there, has a number of different business areas, and many of you may know Emterra from the environmental side, the waste hauling, MRF operations. We have a tire recycling operation, and we have a liquid processing side that does the packaging. So Rise is now a separate business unit within the Emterra group, specifically set up to help companies go through this change in Ontario that we're going through, but also to help companies with other product and circular economy issues and solutions. So next slide, please. So, well, we have this new regulation that came out, and again, it to be blunt, falls pretty short from what we saw in the draft regulation. I think most people on the phone will have seen those changes. It really doesn't add any expansion of products with the certainly doesn't add any significant quantities of products. It just adds a few minor things that were missed in the original days that actually weren't even around in the original days, like the drones and things like that. So we see this regulation as a bit of a challenge coming into it from the pro standpoint, because there really is no growth. There really is no expansion of per se. The only expansion is on bulbs, and that's in 2 years from now. We also have this terminology in the reg that has shown up in the battery reg, and as here as well, which is best efforts for performance. So these are for the producers and the pros. The targets established as they have been, but it really is this issue called best efforts. And where that causes some challenges is there really hasn't been, you know, how much demand is there to go get this material? Now, again, RPRA will say that the systems that get created do have to be maintained, and that is true. But getting producers to deal with best efforts is, and to push the envelope a little bit is a little challenging. And we have this best efforts for the first 2 years of this program. The other thing that we see is, while we waited a good 5 or 6 months for the this regulation to come out, it kept to the original timelines that were laid out a couple years ago, in fact. And so now we have this rush to activity for everybody, including the producers. And the producers have basically 6 weeks to not only understand the nuances and to understand what's going on, and this is a change for them. All these programs are significant change on the producer sides. And they have to actually register with RPRA and identify who they're working with. So on our side, the challenge here is that producers, when they're in a crunch in the time of COVID, our concern here is that producers won't have a lot of time as we head into Christmas season as well, and they may just stay with the entity that they know already, and I think we all know who that is. Next slide, please. So regardless of these challenges and shortcomings, I would call it, my quote on terms of the regulation, RISE is here for the long haul. We are. This is something we want to do and provide pro services across all the waste streams that transition. So we will be providing pro services to producers who might wish for customized services, whether that's specialized services at their operations and takebacks. We also know that under this new model, there may be some opportunities for pricing things differently and pricing options that producers might be interested in. So again, our pro model, our pro approach is to work for those companies and to see if we can solve some of the issues companies that have at the mid and smaller size level. So those companies are the ones that need the personal assistance, the hand holding, the grief counseling in some respects because of the changes that they see. And we want to provide one-stop shopping for producers, for the electronic items, the ITT and AV, eventually for the lightings. And heck, there's even some producers out there that also have batteries and tires as well. And that's kind of where we're trying to fit our pro business service and our offerings. And again, as often is the case in these situations, sometimes the entity that comes forward has a history with producers. Again, we're trying to be there to provide choice to the marketplace, as was the intent of the original act. RISE does have, so even though we have been preparing for this, we do have agreements in place with battery and haulers and processors, so we can provide the full range of services for producers, and that does include providing collection or hauling and processing services from municipal permanent depots or events as well. So in terms of, this is our last slide, so in terms of next steps with municipalities, the other challenge that we do face, and the reality here, is that RISE won't be in a position to commit to municipalities until we have some producers who have the need for that managed volumes of material. And we're right at that beginning stages of that period. So at this moment, yeah, it's challenging to be able to commit to if a municipality were to contact us, because of that very fact that we need to have the producers on board to have that demand or need for the material. And again, because of the shortness of time, that's going to be a real challenge over the coming weeks and months. But I know municipalities want to have everything largely in place by the time the program transitions in January. So we've got these dynamics in play. We do suggest, though, that municipalities that are also working with existing haulers and processors, and I won't name any names, but the largest ones are, and most of the municipalities on the larger side, my understanding is they actually are probably already working with an entity, and maybe not with OES. I would suggest you contact them about maintaining and service, especially through a transition period, because they ultimately will be working with pros, and I'm not even suggesting one pro. They're likely going to be involved in working with pros, the plural. So I would encourage for municipalities that are looking through this transition period, go back to who you're working with now. They probably have some answers to some questions you might have. But as this is a fluid situation, we're also asking that municipalities that do want to go out to the market to see what services are involved, or to put forward a proposal, that you include us in that distribution list. Things change. We may be in a different position even a week from now, and may have that need. So We are interested in participating in the pro services side, not only for producers, but we do want to have some municipalities as part of that collection network, and we'll probably do so through the existing partnerships we have with the processors that we're working with. So that's all we have to say at the moment. I will turn it back, and we have our contact details on the next slide, but I'll turn it back to Dave or Amber for questions there.
That's great, Gordon. Carm, thanks very much. Thanks for the presentation. So, Gord, I think we, take from it that you guys are still, you're very interested, but your ability to offer, have concrete discussions aren't really there yet. You would be interested in being apprised if anyone is looking to pursue sort of contracts and things, and definitely folks can consider that. And I think the other thing I heard from you is that those folks who maybe have systems in place or arrangements and contracts with existing processors or collectors that are outside of the current OES system, that they could also consider, in addition to the pros we've heard from today, talking to those folks to see if they are in fact going to play a role. I think we heard from RPRA a bit earlier that you need a contract with one of these pros. I guess if it was another party like that, there would just need to be some assurance, I think, for the municipality that it does tie back to one of the pros, just so you've got that sort of backstop, I think.
And that's fair. And again, but I also think that certainly the larger processors and haulers will have those arrangements with pros as well. And so rather than making a lot of disruptions, you may not require, or you may not need to have a lot of disruptions, especially early on in the transition period, because it's likely that most of those processors, and again, you do have to check that they are registered with RPRA. There will be a registry of processors with RPRA as well. That's a requirement.
Yeah.
And I know RPRA is sort of giving that advice of having those agreements in place. I fully anticipate that does make some sense over time, but also remember that your current service providers are likely going to be involved and can either make the connection through that route as well, right? So,
yeah.
It's just an option especially during a very crazy 2 to 3 month period that we're all going to go through.
Yeah. I think the cautionary tale of it is, we know some folks did that, hearing that on tires from some of their existing haulers and other people they dealt with in the supply chain, only to find they weren't ultimately part of a pro scheme and ended up with a lot of tires sitting. So I think just some due diligence. If that's a route you want to go as a municipality, I think you want to really be sure that you've got in your agreement some ties back to a pro that is registered, so that you're going to be included in the system.
Exactly. Agreed there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions.
Not surprised
at this point,
but that's understandable. But thank you again for the opportunity. And again, we do as we go through yet another transition here, we do want to work with the various municipalities across Ontario as we can. So thanks for the opportunity, and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, Gord.
Thanks very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, next we have up Reverse Logistics, Group of Americas, Inc., and we have a presentation from Andriana and Naomi. So Reverse Logistics is a new player to me, but is quite interested in electronics and in offering services as a pro in this market. So we're pleased to have them today. And I see that I see Naomi's on. I will pass it over to you, Naomi, to kick us off. And if Andriana's on, I just can't see the full window of speakers, but we'll pass it over to you folks. You've got about 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we've got about 5 minutes or so for a question or two. So take it away.
Okay. Hi, my name's Naomi Manahan. I'd like to wait for Andriana to join, if that's okay. She'll be presenting the first half of the presentation, and I focus more on our operations side. So I'm assuming she'll be hopping on any moment, if that's all right.
Yeah, we can take a second or two, but we've got a bunch of other people coming behind you. So we might have to jump in. Ian, are you able to check and see if Adriana is available?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi there. Hi, this is Adriana from Reverse Logistics Group.
Oh, great. So the floor is yours, Adriana. You've got about 9 minutes or so for a presentation, and then about 5 minutes for any questions that any of the audience has. Naomi is on as well, so thanks very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Adriana Kanavrakis. I'm the Director of Compliance Services with Reverse Logistics Group Americas. And if you could go to the next slide, please. We are a management group. We provide take-back programs and compliance and reporting services for a good number of manufacturers and producers in the US and in Canada and Latin America. We started as a company in Germany in 1991. Our headquarters are there. We started doing take-back programs with automotive products and automotive manufacturers. We expanded as a company further across Europe and started setting up different take-back schemes around Europe for different types of products like packaging, batteries, electronics, tires, a variety of different things. And then RLG Americas, or RLGA, which is where I work, was formed in 2008. It was formed in the US and it broadened its scope over time. So we're now servicing 3 regions, Canada. In Canada, we're largely doing reporting services. The US, we are in 25 states doing we've set up collection infrastructures for electronics in a majority of those states where there's some type of take-back law. And we're also doing reporting, registrations, a variety of things for manufacturers that we're working for. And then in South America, we're doing similar services in 9 countries. I guess if you could go to the next slide, please. So we are a global company. We work with a lot of manufacturers or producers on a global level in different regions around the country. We have over 500 employees. We have some type of service provision in 80 countries around the world. We have 20 regional offices. Our office that covers the US and Canada, there's about 15 of us. And I want to say, yes, we're a large company, but we have a local reach. Like everything that we do, we can't make it work without working locally with local recyclers or processors and local collection entities, because without working locally, it's really hard to make a program sustainable. So if you could go to the next slide. All right, this is high level. I've told you we do regulatory compliance services. We set up take-back programs. We also do voluntary recycling returns and trade-in programs for producers. And then we also offer aftermarket services, which is for it's more like a retail solution. When producers get returns, we take them back, we grade them, and we put them back in the marketplace. If you could go to the next slide. This is to give you a high-level overview of what we're doing in the US that is comparable to what's going to be happening in Ontario very shortly. The US has 25 states that have some type of take-back law with regards to electronics, plus Washington, DC, and we are involved in some way in every single one of these states, and the legislation is different and the requirements are different in every state. We have group plans that we manage. They call them a group plan, an RO, or a collective in the US. It's very similar to what a PRO is or is going to be in Ontario. And we have those group plans in Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington, DC. And my colleague, Naomi Manahan, is in our operations group, and she's going to speak to what we're doing there and what our services are and how it might be relevant to you. If you could go to the next slide. I'm talking really fast because I have this short window. I don't normally talk this fast. So as an overview of what we're doing in Canada now, we work for a number of manufacturers, and because of the way programs are set up in Canada, EPR programs, we have not provided a collection infrastructure to date because that's just the way things are. There's one entity or perhaps 2 in each Ontario covering a product category, and there's no room for I guess, well, for competition. But Ontario, that is changing, and that is why we're here today. A number of manufacturers that we work with asked us what is going on in Ontario, and they asked us this over a year ago. Is there a way that you can help us provide a solution? So I'm going to turn it over to Naomi and let her talk about what we could possibly do with you or for you. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Hi again. So I'm Naomi Manahan. I'm the Operations Program Manager at RLGA. So today I'm just going to discuss some of our current state programs that have similar elements to the new Ontario regulation and how we manage those states. So at RLGA, we value working directly with municipalities and counties across the US, and it's an important part of our network. We also value building relationships with local entities, and it is our intent to engage with local collectors and recyclers. And we also ensure our recycling partners and processors are vetted and audited to maintain integrity in the end-of-life process. So here's this map that Andriana showed previously that talked about the US states we currently work in. I've marked 4 of those states in dark blue because I'd like to talk about them since they operate on manufacturer group plans that have similar components to the new Ontario regulation. So these include Illinois, New Jersey, DC, and Pennsylvania. So just to provide some context, Ontario's population is a little over 14.5 million, but I thought I'd include each state's population so we have a little bit of comparison. So starting with Illinois, which we've had a presence in since 2011, they passed a new legislation that went into effect in 2019, and their program assigns counties to the various group plans that operate in the state. So as a group plan administrator, we work with 10 to 12 counties depending on the year. And this involves facilitating pickup from around 14 permanent sites and 24 events per year. And we also coordinate with multiple processors to facilitate these. For each event, we generally get around 5 to 11 metric tons per event, depending on the county population density and location. And since 2019, we've managed over 4,700 metric tons of e-waste in Illinois on behalf of our producers. So moving on to New Jersey, which, oh, can you stay on the same side? Thanks.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So moving on to New Jersey, which we've also been present in since 2011, and this is actually where our main RLGA office resides. So the program is similar to Ontario's in that it requires coverage across the state, and as a result, we have many direct relationships with municipalities, as well as utilizing our processors' existing network to ensure coverage. We have a very diverse network of processors since the state is actually quite competitive. Since 2019, we've managed over 8,300 metric tons of e-waste for New Jersey, again, on behalf of our producers. Okay, next slide. All right, so the next location I'll be discussing is Washington, DC, which is unique in that it technically is not a state, but rather a district in the US Capitol. So we've been operating in DC since 2017, but in 2020, we switched to a model to service all 8 wards that are represented by different colors on the map, with 32 events throughout the year, so 4 per ward. We coordinate with local government entities to ensure our events run smoothly, and we also have a public outreach plan through press releases, online ads, and social media posts as a part of this program. So for DC, since 2019, we have processed 586 metric tons of e-waste on behalf of our producers. And so the last state I'm going to talk about is Pennsylvania, which is our largest state in terms of surface area. So we've been operating in Pennsylvania since 2012, and this year we have 43 collection sites and 21 events that are being managed directly by our processors. And in 2019, we processed 5,828 metric tons of e-waste in PA. So that was just a quick rundown of some states that we feel are similar to the regulations that are happening in Ontario. Next slide, please. So now that I've provided some background on our operations in the US, I'm hoping I've provided some context to the way we approach relationships with municipalities and local collectors. So our role as a pro is to use municipal collection as a way to diversify our network and ensure adequate coverage for Ontario residents that wish to take advantage of the ITT AV Takeback program. In terms of relationship, we anticipate working directly with municipalities to determine if their needs align with our coverage goals, as well as working with local processors' existing relationships with municipalities to avoid any disruptions in service. So it will be a combination of the 2 relationships here. And then the services that we can offer include LTL and FTL pickup, swapping out roll-offs, facilitating collection events, and also facilitating the collection point to self-deliver to multiple processors in Ontario. So we like to customize service in any municipality we work with to ensure our goals and your needs are aligned. Having said that, when it comes to sorting requirements, this will be determined on a case-by-case basis, and the same can be said for reporting and data management requirements. It's also case-by-case. Of course, we will ensure that any collector or municipality we work with will be in compliance with the new regulation, but again, we want a customized approach based on each municipality's needs. Next. So thank you so much for your attention. At this time, we'll take any questions you may have. Also, if you want to email or call us, please use this email or phone number.
That's great. Thank you very, very much to the both of you. I know that we gave you well, we gave everyone the same amount of time, but appreciate the fact that that you went last. I think that was fantastic, and I just want to make sure that you know that the slides are going to be sent around to each of the attendees today. So helpful to have your contact information on this last slide, and certainly interested in learning more about you and all the other pros in the space. So thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
It's appreciated.
Thanks very much.
Alrighty.
Okay, we will, everyone, I think we've timed out on you. We knew it was going to be a jam-packed agenda, and we've done that. We've come to the end of time. There are a few outstanding questions that we will look to answer, and can provide those back out when we send out the slides. There are a couple of additional slides here from two more pros who weren't able to make it today, but are interested in the market. The first one, Calm 2, Amber just flipped to it. So they are they're a market entrant that is participating, and we will send you out their contact info. And then secondly, there was just a note from Call to Recycle. They're not going to offer an electronics program, but they did want to make clear that they are committed to fully serving you as municipalities. So things like, you know, any batteries, whether it's in an electronic material or not, they would continue to accept. So that is just a little bit of clarification from them on a couple of fronts that you can take as information. So if you have any outstanding questions that didn't get answered today, please let us know. Please send them in to us, and we will we'll get back to you with some answers where we can, and we will send out the slides as soon as possible. So thanks everyone for attending today. Thanks for your indulgence on going a bit over time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks everyone.